Hi, everyone. Welcome to A Way of God's Remembrance with Michael Hayes. This is presented by Awake to Love. I'm Lee here with Cindy. We are the volunteer Zoom hosts and so grateful that you are here. As a way of introduction, I will read Michael's words to bring clarity to the focus and format of this gathering. This is a weekly gathering for those seeking greater awareness of their true nature. There are many paths and approaches to higher consciousness and to greater awakening to who we truly are. The essence, the truth of all these paths is more about remembering who we are and have always been, rather than becoming something different or more than we have seen ourselves to be. A way of God's remembrance goes to the heart, to the intention of all the paths. This is what we will explore each week. Michael will share thoughts and awarenesses that come forward as relevant and purposeful for our time together, followed by questions and answers related to what he shares about. We will begin with an invocation of light to help support us all to be in collective alignment. Michael will lead us in the light invocation. After the light invocation, we will play a recording to lead us in Anai Hugh chanting.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here again, and I'm very grateful for the Spirit of God to support this action. And I would like us all to be present now with this, that is the Spirit of God that welcomes us every instant into communion with itself. We do ask that through this, that is the Holy Spirit, we may also come to know and receive the blessings that come to us through the Christ and our Lord Jesus and the mystical traveler consciousness as it manifests remembrance into all consciousness at all times. We open to receive your blessings, dear Lord. We're thankful for the goodness and the guidance and the love. We're also grateful, Father, that you may bless not only the people that are partaking of this, but all those who might come in contact with these people. There might be a ripple effect, that this remembrance might go forth from this day forth into the consciousness of many. We do this not with an expectation or demand, but with a thankfulness that for those who are ready, the season of harvest might be upon them. They may reap and know the peace that surpasses understanding as it calls to us now. We give our thanks. Amen. There's a joy that I've been experiencing today that is almost unexplainable and unfathomable to me, given all the challenges I've had today in my personal life and all the decisions I've had to make and all the things that seem to have gone wrong. I'm just aware that in the truest of realities that I know, none of that matters. And that the plans of God are being fulfilled, and that the joy of the Spirit is ever present and ever available. And I am grateful to be experiencing that. And I pray for each of you that you can experience that as well, especially in the times of challenge, in the times of upset, in the times of worldly demand that would call us to put all our focus and all our urgency on the events that are transpiring around us and maybe to us. And I'm so grateful that this, that is the living love, that is the Word made flesh, that is the Spirit eternal, is with us always. And simultaneously, we can have an element within our humanness that is in suffering and is despair and is in alarm. And then this greater truth of our existence, which is in thankfulness and is in bliss and is in this ecstasy and is this amazing peace. I've been watching this today, and it might have been in the last sharing we had, but fairly recently, last couple, I reflected on experience I'd had coming into the divine remembrance to such a degree that I fully was in that remembrance of my oneness with God, and then was offered the opportunity to let go of this form and let go of this story and to dissolve back fully into the source, to God, and that I had stopped the process and with very much my request, or maybe it was my demand. Actually sounded more like a demand, but I think it was a request. Said, no, I don't want there to be anything in all creation or all reality that could make me forget you. And there was agreement from God, and I was thrust back into creation, like really thrown back in. And I have more understanding of that now because I know that for most of this life and for all of my other lives, I've had progressively more and more glimpses and clues and signals and signs of the truth of the ever-present nature of God. And yet, no matter how many of those manifestations that were indicative of God's entirely present nature, power of this world and its compelling stories and evidence would seduce me back into the forgetting, into the distracted state and the agitated state and the incomplete state. And more than anything, the state of being a self, being individuated, being identified with this form such that I saw reality in relationship to this form. And having the remembrance, regardless of what goes on with this form, is still my prayer. And today is one of those days where I recognize that I am more and more able to find the remembrance in the midst of all the seduction and distraction and clamoring of the world, which is a very beautiful thing for me in my own remembrance, in my own discovery of God's totalness. And I share this also as an invitation for each of you to reframe your life as much as you can, whenever you can, and recognize that the blessings already are, which is also meaning the blessings always are, which means that our beingness, together with our Creator, has instituted all this, has set this all up, that we would be in this land of forgetfulness. And we would be going through the push and pull of coming to remembrance and back and forgetting. And that the having of this and the living of this was very much our intent and very much God's intent for us. And that we chose this. And choosing this was not a mistake, but was ultimately the greatest blessing. And so for each of us and all of us, I do pray that we can all come to this remembrance. And it's funny, even when I said for each of us and all of us, inside of me, I was aware that that was a statement made to the part of us that's in forgetting, because the part of us that is in remembrance knows that we're all one, because there is only one. I think it was Ramana Maharshi who was replied when somebody asked him about how he got along with others, and he responded, "There are no others." And the truth of that is more present with me, in me, to me, and for me. And I'm grateful. And I see this same truth with all of us in every moment, that there is the one teacher, the one truth sayer, and that is God. And that one lives us and lives through us and activates itself within all of its self, which means all of its created forms, to have an investigation and have an experience, have an expression, have an explanation of this eternal togetherness. And what a glorious, wonderful thing that we can know. It's strange we can know it, but even more so, God is knowing it through us. And we can know, one, that God is knowing itself through us, but we can be that God that's knowing itself through us. Like this paradoxical seeing it from both ends. And this is the great blessing of spirit that underlies all of this creation and the value of it and the meaning of it. Within this, we'll all do our different dances and have our different concerns and different struggles and different storylines. But eventually, from all the different storylines, each of us will cull different learnings. And all the different learnings we cull will be returned back into God. And they'll be part of God's great story. So the great storyteller that is God is telling us all a story with this call and with our coming together. Let's surrender our perspective and rejoin God in the higher perspective that is God's, and see this event and see this opportunity as God sees it. Know that we are one with the Creator, and in that greatest perspective, we actually know we are one with the creation. And we simultaneously are looking and simultaneously being seen from both perspectives. The angel of the Lord that spoke to Jeremiah speaks now to each consciousness, bringing a revelation along with remembrance. That today is the day the Lord hath prepared for every consciousness to free itself from the dimensions of the past, of the original plan of creation that may still have a hold upon each consciousness. To know that your journey is the journey of the resurrection of Christ, the journey of the unfolding of the purpose of God to learn of itself and to know itself in all manifestations of existence. You're called forth then from restrictions and limitations of an ancient age to live into this new age, or the call of forgiveness, the call of coming forth in union speaks to every consciousness. Every consciousness includes your consciousness. So listen and heed this that speaks and receive of its grace. There is not a soul in all of the existences of creation that will be lost. Hence, this grace is for all. Come awake then, and let the song everlasting come awake in you as well. Let the fullness of the divine, the call, spirit, reclaims you back to itself as a child of itself. And then you shall know indeed that you are home. Amen. So be it. We're going to now let Lee give us a little bit of an introduction to sharing, and then we'll take a little bit of sharing.
Thank you, Michael. Bless you, Michael. I shared as we were preparing. These opening sharings are the highlight of my week. And this was a profound and eloquent blessing. So grateful. Now I will share guidelines for questions. Questions are to be about a way of God's remembrance and what Michael has shared. To ask a question, please raise your Zoom hand. You can find that by hovering near the bottom of your Zoom window, click on the React button, a pop-up appears, and then choose Raise Hand. Please also turn on your video for full participation. If you are on a low bandwidth connection and are unable to, so be it. Most important, since so many of us have had the blessing of working with Michael over so many years for clearing so many things, this is not that. Please do not ask questions of a personal nature and do not ask Michael for assistance in clearing. Questions are to be for your benefit, the benefit of those of us gathered, and those who will participate via the archives. We ask that you look to the integrity of your intentions before asking a question of Michael, and thank you for your cooperation. Finally, the legal consent. By raising your hand and asking questions of Michael, you are giving full consent to Awake to Love to make the audio and video of this gathering, including your sharing, available as online archives for anyone to access. Please do not raise your hand and do not share unless you are in full agreement. Thank you. Michael, hands manifesting.
Mm. Oh, on a second.
If you hover your cursor, you'll get the names on everybody's frame.
No, I just realized oh gosh, there was a lot of hands. I couldn't see any hands because the top of the screen was chopped off. Well, let's do Rosemary Ferris.
Thank you. I've just got, yeah, that's it. Thank you, Michael. It's enormous blessing to actually work with you. I haven't actually worked with you, but I've just been enjoying these online beautiful sharings and gifts, and thank you for today. I've also felt very challenged by just being drawn into the mundane things that have to be handled on this level, and feeling very much that this isn't really my true home, wherever I've come from, But there is something that is a continual comfort to me. And this happens very regularly, pretty much every day, that when I look at my phone, it's either like 11:11, 2:22, 3:33, 4:44, 5:55. So I'm getting all these kind of patterns in numbers, when I look at my phone. And it's like what you were talking about, these remembrances of when that happens. I have that feeling that whatever's happening, I'm in the right place at the right time. And it's so even when I can be feeling out of balance and I look at my phone, it's like whatever I'm going through, it just feels that it's aligned, that I'm meant to be going through that. So I just thought I'd share that because I'm not sure if many other people are having the same experience with, and you probably know I do a lot of numerology. So like as someone who's fascinated by numbers, it's just I keep seeing, these multiples as a reminder, I think.
I think so. I think they work as a reminder for you, very definitely.
Yeah.
Um, hmm, that thing that the numbers remind you of is a sense and a knowing of the harmony of reality and how the patterning of spirit underlies everything. Now you came into this creation um, and worked as in the angelic form in alignment with the Elohim, which are very much creative spirits. And underlying the creation, in the beginning, it said this creation is this chaos, and then out of the chaos, an order is formed, and that becomes this particular form or that particular form of creation. And so you have the ancient remembrance of playing a part in that, in the manifestation of the orders and the patterns. And so part of what this does is taking you back into a remembrance of a time in your reality when you were in constant, continual service to the great Spirit of God and its manifestation. And right now, just there is in the spirit world, they're just calling it a song of the song of deliverance. It's playing not simply for you, but for everybody. And this song of deliverance is something that you know and were once part of producing. And so it's calling you back to the truth of itself and yourself. Mostly the truth of yourself is part of itself. And that you still serve it even through occupying this physical form, this experience, because that alignment is never lost once it is connected to in consciousness. And so it still calls you home. But coming home is not going from here to there. Coming home is coming awake, coming into the remembrance that the blessings already are. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. And this blessing is for us all. And for you, it's an opportunity to surrender more completely to the truth of this and to come into more acceptance of your own nature and be grateful for these reminders you have that God is in charge. And I think we might have lost Rosemary. Thank you for your sharing, Rosemary. I enjoyed that very much. All right.
Michael, I wanted you to note there are 4 hands raised. If you see Leah's, hers is flesh colored and kind of blending into the window and back. So just wanted to point that out to you.
Thank you. I can see other hands now. Okay. Well, I actually see one. Oh, I can. It's just the way my screen is. I just catch the oh, okay. We got some choices here. I'm going to go with this person, Mary Connor.
Michael, thank you.
Hmm.
Ooh. About a week ago, there was a posting on Loving Each Day in which JR was quoted as saying, the foremost spiritual sin we can do to each other is withholding. And then it was describing it in terms of not liking what someone says and therefore avoiding talking to them and then just avoiding being with them. And like it's a slippery slope.
Hmm.
And that got me so upset on the inside. And I don't know if it's like I feel instantly guilty, like instantly called out.
Hmm.
But it's also the fear, and maybe this is just basic self stuff, that like I'm not allowed to be safe. I'm not allowed to have boundaries. I'm not allowed to have preferences or choose. I don't know how to work with this.
Well, let's look at withholding. What does that say?
That I'm refusing the divine in the other person.
Well, are you in who you really are, refusing the divine in the other person, or are you in your personality and that you pretend to be? Are you doing it there?
Yeah, definitely that.
Yeah. And so I look around, I see that happening all over the world. I think the withholding for me, that what it's really about is if there is an instruct from the spirit inside of us or from the higher truth of us calls us forth into expression and we refuse to, we deny it, well then that's a big problem. But there's a whole lot of things in this world. I remember I traveled with John Roger. I used to travel a lot with him. And, we would meet a lot of people. And he wasn't all the time coming out and saying, "Hey, I'm John Roger. I'm the mystical traveler." I can remember people asking him about himself, and he was actually would was never putting himself forward as but he always showed up with the loving, which is the expression of who we really are. I can remember him was it somebody asked him what he did, and he said, "I'm a travel agent," and I really love that. See, who are we really? We are God made flesh. We are God participating in this time-space experience. What do they say about God? Well, they say God is love. So it is the withholding loving, which is the withholding of the spirit of ourselves. And that's the thing that is most, in a sense, going against the truth of ourselves, the withholding of the loving. Not necessarily the withholding of all the quote deep dark secrets or withholding of our thoughts and feelings, withholding of our peculiarities, our particularities, our passions, our prides. I look at the challenge of this place is, can we somehow continue to bring forward the true nature of ourselves, which is loving, even when all the experiences and information that the world throws at us push on us to choose and express less than loving. And if that was that easy to do, we first lifetime we'd have it mastered. This is not the first for anybody here. We've had tens of thousands of them just in the physical. And that other dimensions or levels, we've got a lot more than that. This is a really hard dance to get it just that. But the thing we can look at as human beings is says, well, it's not so much that we have to try to express loving. We have to get in touch with the truth that we are loving, the truth that who we really are is God made manifest. We are love made manifest. So we have to get in touch with that, and in touch with that inside as a state of reality that we live in, that we know. And many times it's just in the being of that, we bless the world and we bless all around us. I was with John Roger a lot, especially as he got older, and he didn't say too much many times. But the loving that he was in connection with came through him. And it was very easy to see that that was having an extraordinary effect on people around him. Often the people weren't even aware of him and they were being affected by it. Because it was using him. It was using his form. It was doing its work through him. And that same spirit that did that through him and that did it through Jesus, when he just said, of myself I can do nothing. It is the Father through me doing his own work who accomplishes all these things. That same force of God's truth, that same love entering into manifestation, meaning the non-magnetic nature of God entering into the magnetic creation of God, is available and is choosing to manifest in and through everyone who will surrender to that choice. Now it's there with all of them, but it's not opening the full flow of it because it won't inflict. So as you come into remembrance, it will automatically come through you. You don't have to be a chatty Cathy. You don't have to be on a soapbox spouting a message. You don't have to be doing anything. Just your very presence will bring presence forward. And that presence will be that gift. So to have that remembrance and have that connection and have the availability of it, and then to deny it is a great loss. Now, there are many, many beings doing this experience of physical creation. The vast multitude of them are deep into the dream of this level, deep into the forgetting. And so they really don't know any better because they're living in their personal nature. They have not yet experienced or realized that the truth of them lives beyond this form. They haven't come awake yet to the one that's outside the form. So to condemn the one inside the form for not doing the work of that which is from beyond the form is really a mistake, which is what you're starting to do there.
Yeah. I was feeling it a lot in the throat. So it's
Yeah. Well, because you're pushing yourself to express. You haven't been given the mantle of needing to go forth in some form of missionary action. So don't presuppose that upon yourself. I say that because you have a confusion inside you from some prior lifetime, some kind of religious karma, where you're involved with a group of very zealous people, and their proclamation to all the members was that you're failing God unless you go. Yeah. And you had great zeal for God, but you didn't have the temperament. You just didn't have the personal wherewithal to parade yourself that way. It was true in the silence of your heart, which is really just saying it wasn't that time for you. But you condemned yourself and judged yourself and measured your life against the idealism that was put forth to you as a requirement of worthiness of God's blessings. And so you self-assigned yourself as undeserving of those blessings. But God has never seen you like that nor held you in that regard. So just let this go as not simply something that is inappropriate for you, but something that was never intended for you. And then you learn from that to not buy into the lesser intentions of the world. And you also learn not to then parade or present the lesser intentions of the world to others. That becomes the karmic balancing. Not simply for you, but for many here. Because it's something we all can fall into, or probably all have fallen into. In this day, though, step forth and move on. Bless you. Mm. Wow, we have lots of hands tonight. Let's see where the light's moving here. Mm. Mel Nielsen. Oh, I think I know who you are. Hello.
Hi, Michael.
Hello.
So I can't see you. There you
Oh,
are.
there we are. There.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you for doing this. I've been really loving spending time with you in this space. So thank
Oh,
you.
thank
Yeah.
you. I'm glad to see you. See, I don't actually see everybody who does this so until they raise their hand. That's the only people I ever see. So I'm glad you've been partaking.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
And I guess my question today, it's not so much a question, but I have this experience with Jesus where I have a deep, intimate relationship with him. It
Mhm.
almost feels like I'm married to him. And
Yes.
it's a really beautiful intimacy. And
Mhm.
I guess I want you to speak to, or if you could speak to the access we have to that intimacy with Jesus.
Well,
Um,
he's always with us. I
mm,
mean, and for those that surrender to the truth of that, they can gain the benefit of that or the blessing of that sense of the companionship. Now, Christ spoke and taught very much of the idea that these things I do, you too shall do, and even greater. And so, what he proclaimed that he was doing was he said he was basically telling us that he was having the experience that he and the Father were one, which is saying that he of his oneness with God. And he said, and these things I do, you too shall do, and even greater. Which is another way of saying is that idea that the Christ lives within us is true. So it's almost like he became and still acts as like a portal into this experience of this oneness with our source. Now, the great message in all that sometimes gets overlooked is that he's inviting us to see himself and to see the spirit in everyone. When he said, when you've done it to the least of these, you've done it unto me. He was basically giving us an easy way or easier way to recognize the God in all, the God in everyone. You have a deep remembrance of Christ. You created a confusion in your consciousness in another life related to Christ because you're having a very deep, tangible experience of Christ. But at the time you were having it, you were in a religious group where there was a, a very powerful, zealous faith and desire for Jesus. But there was a kind of a fanaticism in it, but there was an exclusivity to it. And the there was this idea of preferentialness that went with that. And it was very confusing to you because you were actually having a greater, stronger experience of Jesus than many of those who were professing they were having it. But they were proclaiming it in very loud and bold ways. And your experience of Jesus was true and was, I would have called it what I would call a quiet truth. It was just like there, like the sun rising, and there, like the moon in the night, and there, like the wind blowing. It was like there, like it is right now as we talk. It's just this presence of the divine everlasting. And the group you're a part of were claiming closeness to Christ that was much more bombastic, much more loud, like thunder in the sky, like you know, like almost miraculous in that. And somewhere in all that, in that life, you started to look at your quiet oneness with Christ as somehow is not enough. And it created a confusion that led you to feel like you had to do more, to experience more, to be closer to Christ, or to be more available to Christ's purpose. And it's time for you to let go of that illusion, because it's been in there as a limitation on this that you have. There's nothing more you need than that. Live your life in the celebration of that. And you bless this earth. And this is one of the common ways in which people are actually led away from the deeper connection. They lose it, they lose the ordinariness of it, the miracle of Christ in everything and everywhere. I think John Roger has a thing he did called the covering. And he starts, it's like it came upon him. He starts saying this prayer. And I don't remember it all, but he starts, and Christ with me, Christ behind me, Christ before me. He's just, because he's in that experience of it, of the everywhereness of it. And see, the exclusivity of that idea is that it's something you get, and then you have it special, and you have it, but these others don't have it, and you have to protect it, and you have to, or you have to glorify it. And you don't never have to glorify it. It may, in a sense, glorify itself through you, but it's not doing it for glory. It's doing it to serve. So, it's so easy for me to connect to Jesus, but it's really hard for me to talk about it because it's very personal for me. But you do have history with him. I saw you by the water there when he was there by the water. I remember you as one of those, a gathering. So you were touched by that consciousness, and it still moves you and lives you. And it calls you to be free of anyone else's formulation about it, or live with it, love with it, dance with it, sing with it, pray with it. Sing with it, and let it show you all the ways, or any of the ways, that you might also serve its purpose. but it's rare that it moves in our consciousness in a self-promoting or aggrandizing way. It's there in us, very much the way you sense it. It's just as like a togetherness you share. Now, your opportunity is to let yourself come awake to that same togetherness with every other being, that because it's that Christ spirit is in everyone. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it
Thank
is
you for
beautiful.
sharing that. Yeah, it touched me to reflect on
Mm,
that.
thank you.
Yeah, I'm still there still there having the memory at the water,
Yeah,
looking at you
that's
there.
it.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you got to tune in.
Yeah,
I
me too.
appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Let's see where we're going here.
We're at 7:31, a minute past
Oh,
our intended
oh
end.
my gosh. Oh, so many hands. This is torturous. I should probably end. Um, who's that? I'm going to take Lee Erickson simply because I'm so I'm so feeling the spirit here that we'll do it. I'll break my own rule. All right, Lee, what can we do for you?
Well, thank you, Michael. And this was you had a powerful sharing earlier, and it really struck me, about how we are all one. But one of the things I've been struggling with, I hear you talk about, living thousands of lives. What's so special about this life that this is the life that we could really remember? And I guess also,
It's a good question.
yeah, and and then when we remember, does that affect all of our lives, past and future? Or is it,
Well,
it's up to,
we really only have one life.
that's what I was wondering. And we're just in different dimensions all at the same time?
Mm, that's a great metaphysical question. If you go into the spirit, there is no time or space. So in a sense, you can know it all at once. It's a weird thing. It's like I remember looking at it and seeing all my existences before and all my existence before, and I was in all of them and I knew them all. So yeah, you can have that. But when you're still holding form in time and space, you're going to deal with it more sequentially, deal with it more as a progression of things. And God intends us to have that experience of that. Hence, we're in time and space to have it that way. As for this time, I guess the opportunity is always there, but in terms of coming into remembrance, it was much more difficult to do that if you're incarnating into this planet before, particularly before the coming of Jesus. That was a turning point. Now, there was build up to that through over a long period of time, like preparation for that. And then it came that time, and then he was utilized by God, by Spirit. And the action he performed was to, in a sense, help change a karmic flow into creation. We can kind of understand the Christ action in this way. This is how I have had it explained to me in the Spirit, is that this planet was working under a plan of an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, a karmic law, and that the greater intention of God in individuating itself as souls into this creation is to learn and to grow and that the karmic law of that particular plan as it was laid out was 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 making it very difficult for the learning to take place. It was too exacting. And so souls were kind of caught in these repetitive cycles, loops, and they weren't learning a lot. They're just going through a lot of the same things. And so it was recognized on high by God. And so this other option was I guess was there and was called forth. And then this great master form that performed that, and when it and came into the physical form to do that, and worked worked directly through this action that Jesus was doing, and through the process of that, it changed the nature of the game and opened up this world to be open to another stream of intention, which was, we could say, another way of doing karma, of living and working the process of this planet, which is under grace. And the big differentiator of what grace is about that when we are learning, and when we are learning, then grace is extended and we are freed from the onerous nature of the exactitude of cause and effect. You know, in the Bible, somebody asked Jesus about forgiving. Should we forgive 7 times? And he says seven, forgive 7 times 70. I mean, he's really not talking about 190 times. He's talking about you just keep forgiving, because God is always for the giving, because God is always giving. So in very truth, there is no time where, when you really come into remembrance, you will know that you've always been with God and you could never be anywhere else but God. And then you also know that you're with God in all the existences and God was with you in all the existences. But you also recognize that to that aspect of yourself or element of yourself that, let's say, had gone into form and was having the experience of identification with that form, it didn't seem like God was there. And so that is happening in a divine intent of learning. And therefore, God is not approaching that as something to be punished or something to be condemned for. Because God knows when we come into all this, being unfamiliar with this creation and this experience of time and space, that we will get caught up in it and we will forget. So this was all part of the divine plan and design. Now, we are in a time of, let's say, more grace being extended here. And so the opportunity is, one, because it's over the last couple of thousand years, there's been more and more progression and more awakening. So it's a buildup of a little bit like there's an old thing they talked about called the 100th monkey syndrome, which is some island in Japan where monkeys started washing, because these potatoes they would eat. And then they noticed when enough monkeys started washing the potatoes on one island, all these other islands, all the monkeys started doing it. And the monkeys had no physical contact. And they started realizing, oh, but they were connected on another level of consciousness. So the more any of us come into remembrance, the more it makes it easier for others to come into remembrance. The more any of us come awake, it makes it easier for more to come awake. So there's been a progression of this. There's also been a deepening of the spiritual thrust into the planet at this time, because we're coming to another shift point in the planet. And astrologers will talk about, oh, from the Piscean age to the Aquarian age and all that. And, you know, the Mayan calendar, and they were all pointing to there's a buildup of momentum and things have happened. And there's been more, let's call them higher consciousness incarnating. There's been beings working into the planet that have in ways they haven't before. There's been a movement towards a, I won't call it a merging, but a more of a coming together of the angelic and the human. That's a part of it too. These are different. You can see it from different angles, but they're all, if you put them all together, they're all serving a common game, common purpose. And Christ is a primary orchestrator of that. But it is happening. Plenty of people who would never use that name or think of it in those terms, because it doesn't care about the name you use or the form you use, or it doesn't care about the rituals you do. It cares about, are you choosing to the loving, because God is love. And so you could be a Hindu or a Buddhist or a Muslim or a Zoroastrian. It could work into your consciousness too, because it is more than even the presence of Master Jesus, but he was clearly an extraordinary embodiment and an extraordinary instrument of it. But it denies no one. But it also gives those consciousness that are doing this experiment, doing this individuation, the right to choose. But if you're coming together like this and you're managing to sit through it, it suggests there's an impetus within your own spiritual nature to come conscious. When I do this and these talks, I do it, I can, well, wouldn't say see it, but there's something in me senses the movement of consciousness in the people. Why? Because when you have that, you sense it and activating in others. And I've been compelled from the spirit world to just support this and to talk about it as something that I knew that other people didn't know about. So I was assisted to come into the remembrance, and I was supporting other people to the same thing. But there's all sorts of things supporting remembrance. There's all sorts of great spiritual groups, and they're not just one or this or that has the answer. It's just, it comes through stronger and clearer in some places based upon the level of the remembrance. And there's a lot of pushback on the planet from that power that was in sort of the old law, the old rule, the old way. It's fighting back. It's wanting to hold as many consciousnesses as it can, as strongly as it can, into the eye for an eye mindset and to the judgmental harshness that goes with that. And we see it playing out. We see it in this world, and we can see more and more loving and caring, and we can just see more and more harshness, it seems like. But there is actually more and more of the loving and caring. It's actually winning the day. It's just a lot of the harshness is being expressed in kind of blatant and dramatic ways. But you've been looking for this for a long time, but you made some misinterpretations in some of your other lifetimes, which left you with a doubt. That doubt in you is not a negative for you. It makes you want to be sure, makes you test and check it out. I don't mind that at all. As a matter of fact, my doubting is huge, which is amazing for what I do. But I was raised by scientific. My father was an engineer and a scientist, and my parents were atheists. So I just came upon this because of my experiences. So I really encourage people to have the experiences. See, we can have experiences. Our faith will give us a kind of experience, and it's beautiful. But our knowing gives us a whole different kind of experience. So I like faith, but I think we're missing out if we don't really go for the whole experience, and that's the knowing. Thank you for your question. Thank you for participating here.
Thank
It's
you.
fun. Bless you and bless everybody here. I'm sorry I went a little bit late. I hope it was worth it for you. We'll just say a quick prayer to close it up, and hopefully we can do this again next week. So, beloved Father, thank you for sharing your blessings with us once again, for opening our hearts and our minds and our awarenesses to your presence as it lives in and through us. And dear Christ, thank you for participating so directly with us this evening. I know it's not evening for all of us, but let's all celebrate the loving that's been extended and let it carry us through the week, and let us open ourselves to God's presence. Let us remember that the kingdom of heaven is at hand, that the blessings already are present, and that the Lord of love and the Lord of light is singing a song of deliverance to us always. Amen. Bless you and thank you all.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Michael.
Michael.
Thank you,
Thank
Michael.
Michael, I
you,
love
Michael.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Michael.
Michael.
Glad to be on.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Michael.
you, Michael. Thank you.